This interview is sponsored by Dave Birnbaum and the RE/MAX community. Buying and selling a house can be really tricky right now. You need a realtor you can trust. And I can speak from experience. Dave Birnbaum is the best in the business. If you're going to buy with Birn. 856-524-2927. That's 856-524-2927. Enjoy the show. You're watching another Two in a Blue interview filming from the Energy Defender studio. For any of your solar and roofing needs, call Energy Defenders. We're with Tom Gribbin.
How's it going?
It's going great, man. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
You're a busy guy.
Excited to be here. Yeah, tend to be pretty busy, but I can balance it. And
Yeah, and we were just talking about cursing, so we're gonna let them fly. It's a sign of I get my balls broken so bad for cursing.
And what I've always heard is it's a sign of an honest person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say? I should say that every time. Everyone's like, do you have to curse so much? Like, I'm sorry.
You should come to my office.
It's a construction podcast. It's supposed to emulate a roadside conversation.
You should hear my law office in Philadelphia. Everybody is cursing left and right. Not me. I'm a good Catholic boy. I don't curse that much.
Of course. What else were we just talking? Oh, you proposed to your wife on Brigantine Beach?
I did. Yeah, we went out to dinner. We had always gone to Brigantine, and I wanted Brigantine to kind of be our family beach. We loved going there, and we were on 14th Street, went out to dinner, and then I proposed right there.
Was it horrifying?
No.
I was
We had been together at that point. We started dating our senior year at Villanova. That's where we met. And she's a lifelong Hammontonian, so she brought me here. It's the best decision I ever made.
Implant, yeah, it's cool.
So thanks for having me. I love what you do. With this podcast. I'm familiar with your work.
Appreciate it.
I'm the product of a union family, my father, 50 plus years with LiUNA. Gold card member.
Wow.
Got his gold watch the same year Terry O'Sullivan, former president, got his gold watch. They 1971, I think.
Wow.
1971 or 72, yeah.
He was at the Christmas meeting this year, Terry O'Sullivan.
Was he?
Yeah.
When did he retire? Just a few years ago, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it was that long ago.
Actually, my law partner, Stu Davidson, and him were friends. And, obviously I was proud of my dad for getting his gold card. I took pictures of it when I was visiting and sent it to all the attorneys in my firm. And because I didn't know Stuart had a relationship with Terry O'Sullivan, emailed him. And then we got this nice email back, personalized to my father from Terry O'Sullivan, congratulating him on his 50
great.
years. It was really cool.
That's got to feel good for a guy who's spent so much time.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, that's always nice when you get like leadership to give you a pat on the back.
And acknowledge
it's nice.
The members.
So you're from Pittsburgh originally?
Originally from Pittsburgh. Born and raised in the steel town. Union guy. And made my way out here after I met my wife. And, never looked back. Happy to be in Hammonton. Jumped right in, got involved because, we knew we were going to lay our roots down here in Hammonton, start our family. And I wanted to get involved and run for council. My daughter Grace, who is now 15, was 2 months old when I won my seat on town council. So
wow.
it's been a journey, but I've been happy to do it. And my everyday work as an attorney, I represent working men and women, working class built America, and I'm happy to do my part to support working men and women every day.
Fighting a good fight.
Fight the good fight. I like to say I'm on the side of the Angels.
Yeah, hell yeah. Pittsburgh had a lot to do with the start of the union.
Oh yeah,
with
absolutely.
The Carnegie.
Yep,
Andrew Carnegie.
His
steel mills.
Yeah. Andrew Frick.
The Battle of the Homestead.
That's it.
I'm in the middle of a book about them. I can't get. I'm like I got paused halfway through. I can't resume it for some reason. I just stopped for too long.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy the just how much they had to fight for like everything we have now.
That's it.
And that's really where it started.
Where the labor movement started. I mean, the hours they had to work, the conditions they worked in. I mean, that's really why labor unions formed. And
they were doing 12s originally.
12s, 7 days a week, no weekends.
They switched them to 8s just for more production, so to get more meat off the bone.
Oh yeah.
And then the guys liked it, and then they were like, "Nah, we ain't doing 12s no more." Yeah.
But we I mean, I negotiate contracts on a daily basis. So I do mostly police and firefighters and correctional officers. That's like my bread and butter. But I do represent a lot of different unions. Not so many trade unions, but a lot of public sector unions.
So what what's that mean exactly? Like what you do?
So my representation of police officers, just recently in March, I was lead counsel for Fraternal Order Police Lodge 5. They represent Philadelphia police officers, the 6,000 plus police officers of Philadelphia. And when you go to the table with the city in an effort to negotiate a contract, typically the term of the contract's anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 years. The Philadelphia police officers typically have a 3-year contract. You try to come to terms, and because of the laws in the state of Pennsylvania are very similar here in New Jersey as well, you have the ability to go to interest arbitration if you can't come to an agreement on the terms of your new contract. And so interest arbitration is you have a neutral arbitrator who's typically either a former labor attorney, has some connection to the labor field for the most part. And you have each side gets to appoint their partial arbitrator. So the FOP appointed, my law partner, Rick Polson, and the city appointed another attorney from a large law firm that represents the city. And so the three of them hear the case. Each side kind of puts on their testimony and puts forth evidence to say why they should get the wage increases that we're asking for, or the city might be asking for a change in schedules or maybe a reduction in leave time, whatever it might be. So each side has the ability to present their case. We put on testimony of officers. We submit exhibits. It's a long process, especially for this large of a unit when you have this many police officers that you're representing. And so our portion of it, we put in our first 4 days. We go back in May for another 2. The city will have 5 or 6 days. So it's like a 12-day process. And then beyond that, the arbitrators take all the evidence that was submitted during the hearings, and they collaborate. And whatever their award is what the contract's going to be. So whatever the wage increases are, if there's any changes to health insurance benefits, if there's any increase in their leave time. So we're trying to make sure that we improve this contract, especially because in Philadelphia, and it's not just there, it's anywhere you look in this country, police officers are leaving the profession, and nobody is really signing up to be a police officer anymore. So you have recruitment and retention issues, especially in a large city where they could go to a suburban department and make a lot more money and feel maybe a little bit safer in those departments. You're battling a lot of factors, and in Philadelphia they are down. I mean, a tremendous amount of officers from where they were at full complement. Actually, part of the evidence I put forth was that the amount of police officers in Philadelphia today is the same amount they had in 1985. And
wow,
the population has grown exponentially.
So that's a collective bargaining agreement.
It's a collective bargaining agreement with the city of Philadelphia.
And so your job is to not only help the guys that are there, but incentivize the future.
That's it.
With the collective bargaining. Is this typically like an amicable process?
With parties that have a good working relationship, a long working relationship, it can be. Sometimes I won't say which client it is, but I represent a unit of correctional officers in another part of the state where their relationship with the county has never been amicable. And so everything's a fight. They're always going to arbitration because they can never come to terms on the agreement. In large cities, you typically do see interest arbitration. In smaller municipalities, you don't. It's a big cost to go to interest arbitration. You're paying not only the arbitrator's fees, your attorney's fees, your experts' fees. We have to put economists on to talk about whether or not the municipality has the ability to pay for what you're asking for, especially if the finances of a city come into play. If they're saying that they don't have the ability to pay, then you take a closer look at their finances.
And this works the same for labor unions and all that stuff? It's the same process?
So for the most part, those
Essentially?
that have a collective bargaining agreement, yes.
Okay.
Not everybody has the rights that police and firefighters have, which is because they don't have the right to strike. So police officers, firefighters, correctional officers, they can't just go out on a picket line if the city doesn't meet their demand. The municipality doesn't meet, they reach impasse and they can't come to terms on an agreement. So, state laws recognize that because they're giving up that right to strike, that they have binding interest arbitration, and that's the process by which they get their agreement. Otherwise, typically in the private sector, you have the ability to go on strike. So I'm negotiating a contract with a very large pharmaceutical company for workers that we represent, and if they don't come to terms by the end of the contract, then they have the right to go out on strike, and that lasts as long as you reach an agreement.
Mm-hmm. Now, is once it gets through the arbitration process and they've made a ruling, is there any form of appeal that either party could?
There is. Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on the laws of the state. Typically, you Act 111 in Pennsylvania is, says that this should be the final this should be the final, the end of the road, so to speak. But there is a appeal process, and it's a very narrow look. It's called narrow certiorari is the legal term. It has to be, there are only 4 factors that could really overturn either the entire award or a portion of the award. I had a case with that unit of correctional officers that I was talking about where during the pandemic, they were not provided with leave time if they contracted COVID. And the federal government had a program called FCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And that, was federal funds that were given to a state in order to ensure employees, public employees received pay if they had to go out because they contracted the virus or someone in their family had contracted the virus, or maybe schools were shut down and they didn't have care. There was a provision in there that allowed a municipality to have a unit of employees opted out. And one of them, obviously, first responders, so police, fire, and correctional officers. And some counties chose not to. If a correctional officer or a police officer got sick with COVID, they could go out and receive 2 weeks of FCRA leave where they would be paid. This particular county chose not to do that. The rationale behind that was that if too many correctional officers were out, they wouldn't be able to maintain the operations of the jail. And so we went to, in interest arbitration, we asked for a provision that would provide officers that had to use paid leave. So leave that they had earned, either vacation or personal days or sick leave. If they contracted COVID, they were told that they couldn't come to the jail, right? Obviously, they didn't want it to spread, but they had to use their own leave in order to cover the time that they had to be out. And so what we asked for was allow those officers that used it from the beginning of the pandemic to the to December of 2020, which was the period that FCRA was applicable, to allow those officers to have additional reimburse them essentially for the leave that they used. This municipality appealed that part of the award. So 2 of the 3 arbitrators, which would have been the neutral and the union-appointed arbitrator, sided with us and said, yes, we're going to provide them with that additional leave. The county appealed it, saying that the arbitrators were forcing them to comply with FCRA, which they had the option to opt out of. And my whole argument was, we're not forcing you to comply with FCRA. FCRA was no longer a law at that point. And they had already realized the benefit of not providing their correctional officers with that leave because so few officers probably called out. I'm sure sick officers showed up for work because they didn't have leave to use.
That's so dangerous at that time. I mean, there was a time in COVID where, that felt dangerous to just trap, especially in a jail.
In a jail.
And in the old age homes, the hospitals, where it just spread like wildfire. I mean, looking back on it now, it's like, oh, well, you know. But I mean, at the time, it was I mean,
scary.
those strands were running wild.
We had no idea. And we were, and especially, you know, I was able to work from home, and you have, you know, police couldn't Zoom into work. Correctional officers, firefighters, they were showing up. Your law enforcement and first responders were the ones on the streets every day showing up for work. They had to. And yet they were treated differently than most.
It's stupid because it's not like it's their money. It's federal money that's paying for it. And just because you're not paying it doesn't make them any less sick. Yeah. You know, there's like no logic at all behind it.
There was, I mean, it was a scary time. It was spreading throughout a lot of jails in the country. Some jails reduced their population for you know, low offenders. And, you know, the Philadelphia jail population went down, starting to go back up. But we won that appeal, though. So we created
Congrats.
We created good case law on that. So, yeah.
That's good.
But I mean, I love the work that I do, especially for, you know, for the clients that I have, especially for police that, you know, don't typically, you know, it's a hard time being in law enforcement. At least it has been for the last few years.
COVID.
Yeah. COVID.
I mean, you name you know. It's
COVID. It's, you know, they're facing a lack of respect, right? And a lot of cops are second guessing their career, and so that's why we're trying to, you know, provide things in their contract.
What can be done? Like, what can we do to reverse that? I mean, is there any going back to the days where like police officers are feared and respected? Like, is there any ever going back to that?
I think, well, listen, I was raised to always respect law enforcement. I think it starts at home. If you want your children, if you want people to grow up to respect law enforcement, it starts at home, obviously. But to recruit more officers, to keep the good officers that you have to incentivize them. I mean, it's a dangerous job. It's a job that I couldn't do, you know, and they're literally putting their life on the line every day. And during the interest arbitration in Philadelphia, you had an officer in the middle of day 3 of my presentation. We break for lunch. My entire side of the room clears out. I have no idea why. Here, a Philadelphia police officer was shot while transporting a mental health patient to a hospital. He wrestled his gun away from him and shot him. And so we saw in real time the risk that police officers face. And to her credit, I mean, they have a good relationship with the mayor of Philadelphia. She seems to, you know, say all the right things in supporting law enforcement. But, you know, it's great to have that level of support, to hear a politician in Philadelphia talk about their unabashed support for law enforcement. There's one way to say it, and there's another way to do it. And to do it would be to make sure that they have a contract that will help to recruit more and retain those that you have.
So I want to get back to this arbitration a little bit. So it goes through appeals, and then does it get kicked up to like another level of arbitration? Like, is the top, like the NLRB, is that the top of the,
so in
like the Supreme Court kind of?
In public sector, it goes through the state courts.
Okay.
So from arbitration, it would go to your lowest level, which is your Court of Common Pleas, your county courts. And then from there, it would go to your next level. It's, Superior Court in New Jersey. It's Commonwealth Court in Pennsylvania. And then ultimately, it could be appealed to the state Supreme Courts. Those decisions wouldn't go beyond that. So the NLRB, that's all private sector. That's
unions and stuff like that. So when it goes into arbitration for unions, that's where it gets kicked up to, is the NLRB?
No. So you have the right to arbitrate. You don't have so there's 2 different types of arbitration.
Okay.
There's interest arbitration, which deals with the contract. And then there's grievance arbitration, which is either contract interpretation or the discipline of a member. And then that route, most unions have. So you have that protection. All unions give their members, mostly all unions, give their members the protection, job security. And most contracts say that an employer cannot terminate an employee unless they have just cause. Just cause isn't defined. There's different factors, but if the member files a grievance and the union disagrees and says that the employer didn't have cause to terminate that employee, you file a grievance, you take it through the grievance process. If the employer is unwilling to change their mind and the union and the members still believe that, either what they're saying occurred, didn't occur, or whatever the case might be, you can take that to an arbitrator to determine whether or not it happened or whether or not the level of discipline was appropriate for the offense if it did occur.
So that really protects the worker.
That protects the worker.
Because even the unions have a incentive to side with the contractors, because these contractors are signed with the union.
Yeah.
Like they are as in on, as in with the contractors they are with the worker.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important to have that NLRB, hierarchy that
the NLRB just, if you have unfair labor practice charges, mm-hmm. that's where you go. You go to the NLRB to pursue that. If they protect private employees' right to unionize, to organize, and if in doing that there's any retaliation, it protects them in that regard too.
So what's been going on with the NLRB then? So there's five
members of the board.
Of the board.
Right.
And 3 of them were relieved at one point. So there was 2, and you need 3 members
for a quorum
to come to an agreement.
Yep.
So anything that went up to the NLRB was basically just null and void because there wasn't enough members to agree on anything.
So that was occurring. As of Monday, the one member that the president had removed was reinstated by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals.
That's cool.
So right, you have 5 members, and they're appointed to 5-year terms, but they're staggered, and no more than 3 of the appointees can be members of one political party. So there's supposed to be a balance, and it's an independent agency that protects employees' rights to organize, and they hear and adjudicate and rule on unfair labor practice charges. So in order for that to occur, of the 5, you have to have a quorum of 3. So when President Trump was inaugurated, you had 3 members. There were 2 vacancies. He has yet to nominate anyone. He has the ability to nominate 2 members. He has not yet nominated 2 members. And instead, what he did was he fired one of the board members, who happened to be a Democrat appointee, Gwen Wilcox, and she challenged that because to be a member of the NLRB, you get appointed by the president, but it has to be confirmed by the Senate. And those members cannot be removed unless there has been some sort of malfeasance or some kind of dereliction of duty, basically just cause. Mm-hmm. The same thing for a worker that is protected by collective bargaining.
They're protected by their own rights.
So there's Supreme Court, there's law that says that because of Senate confirmation, they cannot be removed by the president. So that's probably going to get challenged because now member Wilcox challenged her removal, and it went to a 3-member panel. So sometimes when you file an appeal, there are typically, let's say there's 11 members of the court, 11 judges. But your first appeal might only go before 3 of those judges. And that's what happened here. 3 judges heard her appeal. 2 sided with the president, 1 didn't. So they upheld her removal. Then she filed for what is called en banc, which is I want all 11 members to hear my appeal now. And when they did that, it was 7-4 in her favor as of Monday, and she's been reinstated as a member.
Well, how does she end up with just 4 judges out of 11 to begin with? Like, how did that happen?
That four-sided with the proposal that they believe it's more likely than not that the Supreme Court is going to overrule some prior precedent and allow the president to have this power, this all-encompassing power to remove
didn't you
members.
say that there was just 4 of the 11 judges to hear her appeal to begin with?
3 initially. Yeah, just 3 initially.
And so, but how does she end up with 3 out of 11? Like, how come there wasn't just all 11 judges to begin with?
Because there's so many appeals that go before it's part of it's really part of efficiency purposes, kind of, because you can hear a lot of those cases quicker. You can have more courtrooms with 3 judges in each one, and you get through appeals quicker that way. And to actually be granted a full hearing before all of the judges is pretty rare. And in this case, they know that this case is going to the Supreme Court, so all 11 judges heard it.
And what does that do to disrupt things when the NLRB is not intact?
It's nothing can move really at that point. You're any petitions to to unionize are being slowed down. Any unfair labor practice charges that need to be resolved are not going to get resolved because you don't have a quorum. So, I mean, honestly, I think the simplest thing to have done would have been for the president to just appoint 2 members, and he would have, at that point there would have been 3 Republican members of the NLRB, and you would imagine that they might rule in a way that favors the president's agenda.
Okay.
So, and then another thing he did was he fired the general counsel, which is like the NLRB's attorney that that presents cases on behalf of the NLRB at board hearings, Jennifer Abruzzo.
How does the NLRB not have the right to appoint their own attorney? How come that comes from the president to begin with?
It's I think it's part of the National Labor Relations Act.
Okay.
So it's in the law that the president has the ability to appoint. And in 21, when President Biden was inaugurated president, on day 1, the first thing he did was fire the then NLRB general counsel, Peter Robb. And so I think we all had an understanding that once President Trump was inaugurated, honestly, I thought it was going to be day 1. He waited 5 days, and then he fired Jennifer Abruzzo, and then he has nominated an acting general counsel. Still has to be approved by the Senate. So, and then he had the ability to make the lone Republican appointee, Marvin Kaplan. He made him chairman of the NLRB. They have the power to do that too.
Now, is there an NLRB at the state level?
So there are, yeah. So each state, most states that aren't in the South.
Okay, fair enough.
Most states that aren't in the South have a state equivalency like the NLRB, and they have state labor laws that are like the National Labor Relations Act, which was the Wagner Act in 1935. And the state of New Jersey is pretty much modeled right after the National Labor Relations Act. And we have in New Jersey the Public Employee Relations Commission. It's just called PERC. And they hear...
and that's the NLRB of New Jersey?
That's the NLR. That's the equivalency in New Jersey, PERC. In Pennsylvania, it's the Public Employee Relations Board, PERB. Just the acronyms that they use. One's a commission, one's a board. They still, they hear unfair labor practice charges of state employees. So if I feel as though, a municipality in New Jersey has violated the contract with one of my clients that represents the public employees of that municipality, in some way, we can file an unfair labor practice charge at PERC. Or if they discipline them, then you apply or you file for arbitration through PERC. You get a list of arbitrators, and then you have a hearing. I love arbitration in that regard. I think it's the quickest way. I think it's the best way to resolve disputes. It also tends to be the quickest way to resolve disputes too. And for the most part, both sides usually live with the decision that the arbitrator makes.
So when there was just 2 members of the NLRB for that period of time.
Very brief, yeah, but
just,
nothing was moving.
Right. So even in a state like New Jersey that has its own system like PERC, you can't organize still without that federal level being there?
You can. It's just that there are, and again, a lot of with the reduction in the federal workforce, you're starting to see each region of the country has an NLRB office. We're Region 6 and no, Region 4, sorry. And you have a number of employees there that process, RC petitions, which is that there is a group of employees that are filing to organize with an established union or maybe create their own union, right? And those, without a lot of employees there, a lot of that process is getting slowed down. It should be a quicker process, but in terms of like unfair labor practice charges, that's really what the board hears and rules on, whether or not an employer is violating violating laws, if they're trying to do direct dealing with members instead of going through the union. If they're violating those laws, you go to the board to adjudicate that, and without a quorum, that's really slowing things down. So,
and you have once you petition, you only have a year, right, for that petition to be acknowledged. For
the most part, yeah. You want to move quick. You have to have a 30%. You have to have a 30% showing. So that means you have to have cards signed by at least 30% of the workforce to have an election. And so you have to make that showing. And then you have a hearing to determine the scope of the unit. Is that going to include everybody? Is it a wall-to-wall unit would be all the employees? Is there a certain segment of the workforce that you're looking to unionize? Sometimes a union's looking to only represent a small portion. And then in an effort to defeat that, the employer may be looking to add more employees to that unit because they think ultimately they're not all going to vote for the union and the vote will fail. So
we saw this with Amazon in New York.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, right?
Yep.
Where they got their 30%, and then was it just Amazon that just pushed it off to extend past that year to the point where they had to start the whole process over again?
So you have a year to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement, and they wouldn't sit down at the table.
How come it didn't go to arbitration then?
They didn't have that right. They didn't have that right.
Because Amazon wouldn't sit at the table?
Yeah.
So how come there's no one there to say, like, you have to come sit at the table and make an honest effort to bargain? Usually
that is what the you try to get that. You try to get the parties to do that. And
I mean, you would think New York would have like a strong,
But they're not. They're not held. They're not under the. They would not have been under the state laws of New York.
That's NLRB.
That would be under the federal laws, NLRB, because it's.
Well, at the time, I mean, that was a strong, labor friendly NLRB.
Yeah.
How did that? How did that happen?
It didn't. Well, there was. I'm not sure. I don't know the technical aspect of what exactly happened there. I just know that they didn't get a collective bargaining agreement in a year. And that's because there was so much delay. There's a lot of.
Well, that's scary. Yeah. I mean, that just makes a blueprint for any contractor or any organization to put it off and just avoid it forever.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a bad precedent.
It's a bad precedent, but you can, that's why you could file unfair labor practice charges at the board, right? But there's
Could that have been avoided?
It could have been. I mean,
I mean, were the workers doing something wrong that it didn't get?
No.
Well, then, I don't understand how Amazon wasn't forced to the table then if the workers did everything, all their due diligence.
If from our perspective, they should have been. Yeah. They definitely should have been,
especially with that board.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's now. What chance do they have now?
They haven't. There's no unionized Amazon sites, so
there's zero.
Yeah, there's zero. I believe
Amazon uses UPS though, and UPS is
UPS union.
That
FedEx is not. UPS is. Yeah.
So they do a little bit, But
Right, but they're not bound, so they're workers in the warehouses.
we just had a
they're
conversation
drivers.
last week about how there's not going to be any like people drivers for Amazon pretty soon anyway, so it doesn't really matter unless the robots want to.
I was at a labor seminar. Someone in Arizona said they're all self-driving cars in Arizona. Your Ubers, your taxis, there's a lot of self-driving cars already there.
So what do those people do that used to drive?
Hopefully they'll consider becoming law enforcement. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
You come into it, you have to go to a different industry. Yeah. So, but it's like a lot of states are now, Easy Pass is becoming the norm now. There's very few people that are employed as toll takers. That used to be
the expressway's
pretty good
doing
job.
away with all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what those big cages on the side of the expressway right now. They're all going to be Easy Pass
readers.
Yeah, and they're doing totally away with all the tolls.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, come on.
Efficiency. That's what we demand.
I mean, who
guess.
wants to say that?
That's it.
Right.
Right. So, but
so you're at a law firm. You say you represent different unions, stuff like that. The Teamsters are one.
Teamsters are one. So there's different, there's different locals, right? Yeah. So we have different locals of the Teamsters that we represent. Yeah, we're the largest union side labor firm on the East Coast.
So you're plugged in.
Pretty plugged in.
Fair to say.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this Amazon stuff. Sean O'Brien, not even a year ago, was like, front and center. Like we're gonna organize. We're gonna get Teamsters into Amazon.
Yep.
Right. A month later, he's at a Trump rally. Not endorsing Trump.
Nope. But
he's there.
He's there.
And now he
speaks at the RNC.
Yeah.
First night of RNC, he gets a speech.
Yeah. And now he's saying that he is okay with right to work states.
Yeah.
Can you make this make sense to me?
I cannot. I couldn't disagree more with Mr. O'Brien on this point. Right to work states. I mean that name comes from the legislation that comes from the groups that want to support this. It sounds good, right? Oh, everyone's right to work state. But what that really does is you have laws where you have unions that represent a sector of employees. And if you become an employee, you pay the union dues in order to have that representation. Collective bargaining as a group gets better wages and better benefits when you're together than any individual could do on their own. And so when you have a union established to represent those employees, if you're not a right to work state like New Jersey or Pennsylvania, employees people that become employees then pay union dues in order to have that representation, to get stronger wages, to get benefits. But in right to work states, they have legislation that doesn't compel those employees to pay dues, but still get to reap the benefits that the union provides, which are, higher wages, a job protection if the collective bargaining agreement allows that, better health care benefits. So, we tend to say that that's really allows them to be freeloaders because they're reaping the benefits that their coworkers are paying to support the union to negotiate on their behalf.
And so, like, if New Jersey turned into a right to work state tomorrow,
yeah,
a contractor could come in and they could pay whatever they wanted. Basically, right now it's not a right to work state.
Right.
So if you are working, you're a non-union contractor, that means you have to pay prevailing wage.
Right.
And basically all that does is it levels the playing field when jobs go out for bid.
That's it.
But now if you're a right to work state, and we already had our collective bargaining agreement, so we are all making what we're making, and then some contractor comes in from, I don't know, Virginia, and says, oh, we pay our guys $10 an hour.
Yeah,
so,
that's more like prevailing wage. But if you look at it, I mean, this isn't just a saying. You look at states that have right to work laws, and those employees make less than states that don't.
I'm saying hypothetically, like if New Jersey was right to work.
Yeah, you're going to see lower wages. Yeah.
Right, because then any contractor could come into New Jersey. They could just lowball the bid because they're paying exponentially less money in labor.
Yeah.
And it would throw basically all the union contractors just would be like done,
Right.
And does that hurt like a PLA?
I mean,
can you put a PLA on a like? Can you put PLAs in a right to work state? Is that possible?
That I'm not exactly sure about that because trade unionism. I mean, I was raised in it, but not an area of my practice. But anything that tends to hurt working men and women, it hurts the whole labor movement. And we always say, and I know the Mayor Steve DeStefano always says this, that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So, the labor movement really needs to stay strong in order to prevent things like this from happening in any sector of labor, whether it's the construction trades or whether it's in law enforcement or whether it's teachers.
Yeah.
You want you support your working brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that's why the local politics are just really important to just get involved because, we were talking about this earlier. The president doesn't really care about anyone. None of them do. It doesn't matter who's elected. They don't really care about anyone, right?
Well, I will say that, the president or your governor or your senator, they might not know every one of their individual constituents, right? But me as a councilman, I make it a point to know the people that I'm representing, the people I ask to put their trust in me to represent their interests. So, yes, do local politics affect your life on a larger scale? I think so. I think local government has more effect on your daily life than any other form of government, right? So that's why I make it a point to be as responsive as possible to everybody everybody in Hammonton, right? And to be out there.
I can attest that. You definitely
accessible.
are.
I try to be.
Very accessible. Yeah.
I try to be. I like people too. Mm-hmm. And I like to support our organizations. I always say I've been on council for a long time and I still attend almost every event I try to attend as many events as I can. And that'll happen whether I'm running for re-election or not. It's just, that's who I am. I support the organizations that support our town. Whether it's the Kiwanis Club, the Lions Club, whether it's the Sons of Italy or Mount Carmel Society or Main Street Hammonton. When they have an event, I'm going to be there no matter if it's October and November, or if it's April or May. I'm going to be there, and I like talking to people, and like you said, it makes me more accessible, and definitely I have to be more responsive. So
yeah. It's funny. I was talking to an inspector the other day who is going to be on this big project that's coming into Bellevue Avenue.
The repaving.
The 54. Repaving. But they're doing way more is repaving. I mean, it's a 2-year project. They're doing all the sidewalk, ADA ramps, or whatever. And is that just going from the Pike to the railroad tracks?
So it will, it's a multi-phase project. Uh-huh. It is going to the expressway, the entrance to the expressway.
Oh, okay. So they're tying into where they already got to a couple of years ago.
They're going to different phases of the project. Mm-hmm. The first phase, I believe, is going to be repairing the handicap ramps. That's going to be the first part of the project,
which is going to be a mess,
right? And so then there's going to be curbing, there's going to be sidewalk, then there'll be repaving. So it's a multi-phase project.
They're not doing anything with pipes.
I don't believe so.
Well, I haven't.
So. I don't know.
Issue under there anyway.
It's a large project. It's a huge investment. I'm not quite sure exactly how much it is, but the state's investing. We're more than happy to make sure that it looks good, right? And we're trying to improve our infrastructure every chance that we can, and we're lobbying the state and the county on the roads that they maintain to do the same here, because it's important for the vitality of the town to make sure that you have good infrastructure.
They're going to be shutting down Bellevue in a couple of weeks.
There'll be parts of it that are probably going to be. Well, this project's going to start the end of the month.
Yeah, they're shutting down Bellevue for I don't know how long they're shutting it down for. I know the contract I work for is paving from Bellevue Avenue on Egg Harbor Road, from Bellevue Avenue
the tracks to the Pike.
To the Pike.
Okay.
Which is going to be a mess
that
too,
might
during
be
the day.
right. But that's going to be like phase. I'm not quite sure what phase that is.
We're doing that soon, I think. I don't think we're.
They're not waiting. They're not waiting for
that's
the
not part of the
aprons
Bellevue.
and the.
That's not part of the Bellevue
Okay.
project. That's totally separate.
Okay.
But what I was saying was the sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. But the inspector was saying like, oh yeah, dude, they already like they let us know like you're in Hammonton, like what these guys say, like that's it. Like they're the boss over there. Which is funny. I don't really know what that means exactly, but it sounds cool.
It sounds well. I haven't heard that, but no, like I said, we made a conscious effort to invest in our road program here, and have sidewalk improvements. It's something that I want to see continue. Obviously, we've seen success from that. Just look not only at our downtown, which has been hugely successful. Yeah. Look at what's going on the Pike too. So, and a lot of that thanks to the credit of the state when they repaved 30. That we are welcoming any repairs that they want to do.
I just saw something on Facebook that Hammonton doesn't take money from the state for road programs. Is that true?
Right. No. Well,
or we don't apply for road programs from the state.
We do get state funds allocated, and we do apply for grants, yes, that we utilize for infrastructure programs. No, we do. Yeah.
Okay. But is there like something different about the road program and what you just said, the grants? Or is that like Burlington County, for example, they're doing a $12 million road program in Burlington County. And
it's funded by the state.
I don't know. Yeah. I really don't know. I didn't understand it either. But it was a guy who was like really plugged into the construction community.
And those are county roads, though? Or are these individual municipalities?
It's all county. Yeah. There's a PLA on the project.
Sure.
You can't have anyone non-union on the job at all.
Right. That's through the county government.
Yeah, but is the county getting that money from the state? Probably. Yeah. Okay. Roger that.
There's probably a program that allows them to get funds from the state for those projects. Yeah.
How about like the cannabis industry in Hammonton? Is that ever gonna come in?
We listen. I always say that whatever issue is brought to town council, I take my responsibilities on council very seriously. I will look at an issue from every which way, and I'm a very detailed oriented person. It's part of my nature, but also as an attorney, I want to make sure that we investigate and we do our due diligence. And so I will, look at an issue to see, is it truly going to be beneficial for the town? So we had, when cannabis was first passed, right, it was approved by the voters. Hammonton voted in favor of the state laws, right? But then when that was passed, we passed an ordinance that would outlaw any dispensaries in town. And we did that fairly early because if we hadn't taken action at the time that we did, then someone could have moved in and set up shop. So we banned that. That's still in place. There's dispensaries are not permitted in the town. And last year they looked at whether or not there would be a grow facility, which is not a dispensary, but they grow, cannabis or produce cannabis products. And that was brought before council, and we ultimately rejected it. And we said it wouldn't fit with the town and what we're looking to do. But there's a lot of us on council that looked at that issue from every different way to see, were there any benefits at all? And ultimately we said no.
Have they incentivized it since the town passed that ordinance banning the dispensaries?
So
further,
my understanding of it is that for municipalities that have either a grow facility or a dispensary, that they can recoup, right, as essentially a tax, a portion of their sales. And I believe it's around 2%.
I think it is 2%.
And it can be that, if you look at whether or not they've been successful in their business, that can
tariff.
It's a tariff. It's a tariff. You can see that there are some municipalities around us that are making a substantial amount of money from that. But, we looked at other ways in which we can bring money into the town. And one of the largest projects that we just looked at was to put a solar field out at the 8th Street dump. Over 50 years, that'll bring, close to $50 million to the town,
So that's cool. That's exciting. I'm actually having, so we were talking about the cannabis thing. I'm having Joe McNally on next week.
Okay.
He's like real big in the cannabis. He was the 825 operator, and now he has like some type of business trying to get dispensaries into municipalities like Hammonton. And Hammonton is one that's like really on his radar.
It is.
Yeah. So I told him I was having you on. He's like, oh, you got to ask him this. I totally forget everything he said right now. But he's going to be on next week. That's going to air on 420. So fittingly.
Well,
so, yeah.
I mean, I've been pretty consistent in my opposition to dispensaries. So it's.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
From the, I'm on dispensaries. Yeah, I've been pretty consistent in my opposition to them. So
that's fair.
There are.
I mean, they're everywhere.
I don't know. I mean, I think almost every surrounding municipality around us has dispensaries.
So like something like that. What if it was a Hammonton resident who and it's like it's approved infrastructure, approved design. Like it's not just like a hole in the wall shack, where like it's like an eyesore. There's a big fucking cannabis plant on the roof. It's like it's elegant. It fits the town. Right. Is that something that you would consider, or is it just like you're just blanket now? Like you don't want someone from like Philadelphia coming to Hammonton to open up a dispensary, that's one of 5 of theirs. Like you want it to be someone who's like from Hammonton. The money's going to a guy from Hammonton. Anyone who's smoking weed or buying cannabis, they're gonna. I mean, it's like you just go right down the street and get it anyway. I
feel like we, I don't think that really fits with Hammonton. It doesn't really fit with the business industry in Hammonton. We're doing, knock wood, we're doing well with businesses. I mean, you look at the investment that Shore Regional just put in with the facility.
That's beautiful.
It's awesome. Amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you think about the money that they invested into that building, because that building sat vacant for 20 plus years. It had its share of problems. They had to invest a considerable amount of capital to get that to be, an operable facility. And then just what they put on top of that, the facade, the inside, it's beautiful. But that investment really, when you think of, they chose Hammonton, right? They chose Hammonton because of the characteristics, our supportive business, our main street, and what has occurred in Hammonton over the last 20 or so years. They could have probably built that facility in any other South Jersey community for half of what they invested here in Hammonton. But there's a reason why they chose Hammonton. And so I think that we have our business community in an area that will attract other businesses, make existing businesses want to maybe invest more, expand, whatever that might be. I see a bright future for business in Hammonton.
That's a fair point. That's a very fair point. So we have 3 urgent cares now in Hammonton? Like, are that many people getting hurt and shit?
I think honestly, it might be the way that medicine's going, with less people having PCPs and more people going to just, these urgent care facilities.
You don't go to your
anytime
primary doctor, you just go right to
urgent care. Yeah. Cool. But that, you think about where we have locations, it was really needed in the location that they're at, for maybe people that don't have the transportation to the Pike, where the other 2 are located, right? So I'm very appreciative of what they did, and it looks beautiful, and I think we're going to see benefits beyond the service that they provide. I think you're going to see other businesses in the area that are either going to sprout up or others will take, maybe beautify. I'm
seeing, like, with these townhouses going up on West End Ave, there's got to be a lot more businesses coming. You got to imagine, right?
Yeah, there's 54 units, I believe. It's going to be, they're going to be pouring foundations there by May, I believe. They're going to be doing foundations. And it's, that project started a long time ago. It took a long time to get where it is right now. But, you look at, real estate in Hammonton is hot right now, no matter where you look.
It's always pretty steady, for sure.
And look at, and it should be. I mean, you look at what you receive for the amount of taxes that you pay for, I would say, I would challenge to say that if you had a $400,000 home in Hammonton and the taxes you're paying maybe about 12, that house in, say, Medford is probably maybe 18 in taxes. We probably, I don't guarantee it. I would be surprised if they provided more services than Hammonton does. And we've maintained services. We've increased services since I've been on council. We've started, Junk Week is pretty popular twice a year. You can put out as much bulky as you want. Residents really like that.
Yeah,
they
my
really
neighbors
take advantage
all
of
did
it.
yesterday. Every one of them. There's mattresses, all kind of shit.
They take advantage of it. Yeah, we do that twice a year, and we coordinate that when we have the town-wide yard sale too. So people like that. A lot of municipalities have been doing away with leaf removal. That's a service that we provide. We continue to maintain. So, yeah.
Future's bright.
I think the future's bright here in Hammonton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, I won't take up any more time. Thank you so much for coming down.
I appreciate it.
Man. I hope you come back, dude. This is a great time.
Thanks.
I mean, every day there's shit in the news about like what's going on. I mean, you are a really good guy to be able to call and talk to, and you can, articulate exactly what's going on. Because even reading that shit, you're like, what am I reading?
What does it mean?
I don't know what's happening.
How's it affect me?
What are all these letters mean? It's all, everything's abbreviated. You're like, what the hell am I reading?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, I'd love to come back. I like to talk. I mean, I don't know if anyone's told you.
As soon as we get done filming here, I'm penciling you in. Yeah.
So does my good friend Jonathan Oliva. He likes to talk too. Yeah. I think you might be talking to him.
And your
soon.
good friend John Caruso, yeah.
John Caruso.
Talk to all your friends.
And he knows everybody.
Yeah.
He definitely knows everybody. So good guys.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, man. I'll see you next time.
You don't have my question? You don't have a question?
Oh, shit. We got to cut. Thank you for reminding me. I ask everyone. I'll ask you. What's the dumbest thing you've seen this week?
The dumbest thing I saw was, unfortunately, even though I had Florida in my bracket, I started pulling for Houston last night. And the way they played the last 10 minutes of that game was the dumbest thing I've seen. I mean, we're only on Tuesday, but that national championship game was pretty bad. I mean, to see it end like that
I can't believe they beat Duke. I mean, they had no business beating Duke.
Duke really helped them too. I mean, but they put the pressure on at the end there, and they were outscored them 10-1 in the last minute, just a little over a minute. So, yeah, I had Florida in my bracket, but I was pulling for Houston last night, and I thought they were doing well. I mean, they were up 12. That was like the third largest deficit for a champion to come back from. As a Nova fan, I like to see it end with Jenkins hitting the 3 for the championship. So.
Dude, that was the best.
Absolutely.
That was the best.
Absolutely.
That was the best national championship game ever.
And
you knew it was going in from the second it left his hand.
It was just, he was
You're like, you had your
pure.
hands up just the second it left
Jay
his hand.
Wright's reaction will never be replicated, right?
Great,
bang, and then stone cold. It was,
yeah.
And the fact that it happened against UNC, I don't know. For me, that was I was holding my now 9-year-old, because that was 9 years ago. I was holding Paige and trying to rock her to sleep, and Jenkins hit that 3, and I was like shaking. I like laid her down, and I ran out of my house. I ran around my neighbors, Jack and Kathy Tomasello. Their son Sean was a sophomore at Villanova, and he was in San Antonio for that game. And, we celebrated with them. And then, 2 years later, they won it again. And the Tomasellos came over. And I did
now they all play for the Knicks.
I love it.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Appreciate
See you next time.
All right.
All right, man.